G'day, Keithy here. Thanks for joining me for part 3. Raise a glass and enjoy a drink with me. Here we go. So part 2, we sat down with the fuel consumption numbers from round 1 and 2. Last one obviously was with the 2-inch suspension lift and the 33-inch tyres. If you haven't seen that video and the reason we're here in the first place, there's a link just up there. Feel free to click that. That'll show you part 2 and part 1 of this video. So we're out here to try and see what effect forward driving, or more so our love of forward driving, has on the fuel consumption of your four-wheel drive. So at the end of not this part but the next part, I'm going to sit down with all of the numbers and we're going to go through the tiny details, the percentages and things like that to make it more relevant specifically possibly to your vehicle if you've got a diesel or something that's a bit different to this Range Rover. So for this part 3 here, what we're doing is we're adding a bit of wind resistance with that roof rack up there and the solar panel, and we're also adding weight. So this is the kind of weight that we could replicate that you might have in your four-wheel drive, say with a set of drawers with your recovery gear and your cooking gear and whatever other stuff you might have in your drawers, and the fridge and my toolkit as well. Roughly 250-300 kilos worth of stuff added to the car, on top of the already 2-inch lift and 33-inch tyres. So the baseline numbers we got from the first 2 runs, here's the last and the worst, was 14.48 around the highway run for this thing with the lift and big tyres. And we had 16.93 litres to the 100 around town. That's the worst that we've got so far. Chuck down in the comments if you feel like having a bit of a yarn about that. Whether you think adding a couple 100 kilos on a roof rack will make any difference to the fuel consumption numbers before you see the results. And we'll get going on this next run tomorrow morning, first thing, bright and early. Okay, righto guys. So we're off on the run now. I've got the 33s and 2 inches of lift, and I've also got my daily load. So this is how the car would be every day of the week. So we've got the drawers in the back, fridge, all of that kind of stuff. I would guesstimate the weight later on. So this is how I'll drive around. Let's see how that affects the fuel consumption. We're about to go and do the highway run. So here we go. We're halfway through the highway run, sitting at 100 k's an hour. Just cruising along. I know it's 110 zone, but I'm only doing 100 k's an hour to be fair on the test, because not all highways are 110. So what are we doing this time? We got the 33s and 2-inch lift, and we've also got the roof rack back on and everything in the back that I normally run. So I've got my drawers, they're full. I've got my recovery gear and all of the camping type stuff that I'd usually leave in the car. That's all still in here. Weight wise, I would say that I've got about 300 kilos in all of that, in the drawers being full, fridge, etc, etc. So it'd be very interesting to see how sort of a combination of weight and the roof rack sort of adds to the fuel consumption on the highway. Now, I'm not thinking that it's going to make too much of a difference, or at least not the roof rack around town, because obviously you're only getting up to town speeds, 60, 70 kilometres an hour at the most. But on the highway, when you're sitting at 100 k's an hour all the time, yeah, I think that's likely to make some difference. The weight, yeah, to a degree as well. What I will point out though, it's not as windy today as it was when I did the test without the roof rack. So, I wonder if that'll play some part in it. I wonder if the economy might be affected because of that. Temperatures are still much the same, low 30-degree mark, and we're sitting at an average of 16.2 on the consumption for the trip meter on the car. As we know, that was a bit out before with the big tyres going on, obviously affecting the speedo and whatnot. So I'd be very interested to know how we go compared to without the roof rack and the weight. Alrighty guys, so we've just done the highway run with the roof rack and 33s and all the weight in the back, the usual round town type thing. I've got to say I was pleasantly surprised. I used less fuel than I thought I was going to use. Things out of my control for that run. Obviously, the wind was a little bit less than what it has been, so there's that. I think I can put it down to purely that, actually, to be honest with you. Yeah, very surprising numbers. I'll give you them at the end. Otherwise, yeah, I'm getting ready to go and do the town loop now with the roof rack and extra weight. I'm thinking it will make a little bit of difference, but probably not considerable amount. We'll see. There's only one way to find out. So we're cruising around town on our town loop. Nothing extraordinary happening at the moment. Still nice and warm outside. I was actually a little bit amazed with the fuel consumption from the highway run. At this stage, the town run doesn't look too different to what it did previously, but stranger things have happened at the fuel bowser, so we'll see how we go there. The car doesn't feel any different to drive. It feels pretty normal to me. I haven't noticed the extra weight or the roof rack or anything making any significant difference. So I've done about 15 k's so far of the town loop. As far as engine temps go, I'm still sitting between sort of about 81 and 90 degrees. It creeps up with the car sitting at the traffic lights. I noticed actually when I went to pick my daughter up from school the other day, I got up to 100 on this gauge here, which we established on the previous test that it's about 7 degrees higher in actual. So that's a little surprising with just the fan and the engine was just idling. Granted, it was hot outside. Dash readout hasn't changed from the last run. It's sort of telling me that I'm doing about 18 litres to the 100 on this town run. I hope it's not real. The temperature creeps up continuously, so I'm stopping at traffic lights now. So far it's gotten up to about 92 degrees sitting at traffic lights, and it cools down very quickly once I start moving again. Once that engine starts to rev up and the fan starts spinning, drops the temp down to about 81 degrees very easily, which on this gauge here is about 88 degrees. Probably where the thermostat opens, to be honest with you. There's been a bit of traffic and there's been a lot of traffic lights and whatnot, so this run is consistent with the last two runs. Well, I'm back from the highway and the town run. I fueled up after each run, and now I'm sitting here in my car in the garage like crazy people do. Anyway, I've got some numbers I want to share with you guys and a little bit of thoughts about those runs. So the highway run, I thought that I actually did a little bit better, but as it turns out I didn't. So the weight and the roof rack have definitely made a difference to the fuel consumption on that. The town run also made a difference, about a very much the same type of difference in terms of litres per 100 kilometres. So with the addition of the weight and the roof rack to the vehicle, I went from 14.48 litres per 100 kilometres on the highway to 15.09 litres per 100. That's about 0.5% there, a bit over 0.5%, almost 0.6% actually. Around town, we went from 16.93 to 17.5 litres per 100 kilometres. So again, that's about almost 0.6 is about a 0.57 jump in litres per 100, 3.37% for those of you playing at home. And it was 4.2% worse on the highway with the weight and the roof rack. So even though I thought that the wind wasn't really as bad on that highway run, I think obviously having that roof rack up top there did make a difference, and the weight substantially. So where to from here? Next step is the thermo fan. So I've got to go. It's going to take me a couple of days to do this, but if you were playing along at home, you would have noticed I've got that little temperature gauge there. So it was the start of the thermo fan project. So that little temperature gauge you see there is a temperature controller, funny enough. And what that does is that initiates when the thermo fan kicks in and out when I've installed it. So at this stage, I haven't installed the thermo fan. I'm going to go and spend a few days fitting that up and testing it and make sure that it can cool the car. before I go ahead and take a few runs around town and on the highway to decipher if it's actually done anything to the fuel consumption, made it any better or worse for that matter. I'm really hoping that it's going to be better, but it may be worse. We're going to find out either way. So there's our numbers so far. We're sitting at 1509 around the highway run and 17.5 on the town loop. Something I wanted to mention too, and I didn't really think of it until now, is that I'm also running a different heat range spark plug in this thing because it's got gas as well as petrol. I've run a different heat range because obviously you've got to try and find a spark plug that sort of meets in the middle somewhere. And I wonder if that's made a little bit of difference to the numbers. I don't think it would have made too much. At the end of the day, it's still going to ignite the fuel and air mixture. It is possible that spark plug is not optimum for just running on petrol like I have been for this test. But it is a very interesting factor there. So with a car weighing about 2.7 tons, 15 to the 100 on the highway, and 17.5 around town, I'm going to go and fit this thermo fan up now, and we'll go and take it for another run, I'll go and test it first, and we'll make sure that it can do the job, and get back to you in part 4.